verbal levels, and beyond which maybe we cannot express. You have to go beyond and experience yourself. Now I should also say, having said all this, spirit and so on, what is the point in our knowing about spirit if I have nothing to do with spirit? So let us also try to understand spirit in a way by which it becomes immediately useful for us, and why we should know what spiritual nature is. I am trying to explain it like this here. We all have learned about velocity. How do you know velocity? Because we have a reference plane which is stationary. With the reference to that stationary plane, I know this particle is moving with a velocity. Now, we can develop this idea and generalize and then say, if I have to observe a change, I should not be undergoing the same change. Earlier we said if particle is moving, I need a frame of reference which is not moving to recognize this motion which is taking place. Now we can generalize it and say, if I have to know a change is taking place, I should myself be not undergoing the change. And that is where I understand that I know I am undergoing a change continuously. And if I can know I am undergoing a change continuously, there is an aspect in me which is not undergoing a change. And that aspect in me which is not undergoing a change, I call as the spirit of mind. You appreciate this? So I already have a spirit, and I continuously make use of that spirit of mind. Every second I am using it to record the changes which are taking place within me itself. And what is our problem? Our consciousness is always, as so far at least, is associated with the change, and our consciousness so far has never associated with its changeless nature. So the technique which probably we should understand is how to shift our awareness from the changing world to the changeless aspect within us. You appreciate this? And then of course probably we will know our spiritual nature ourselves. You are able to appreciate that? So we have to appreciate our own changeless nature by a technique by which we can shift our consciousness to the changeless nature of ourselves. Now having understood this, so today, what is finally the understanding we have? That we have to transform ourselves to an ideal person. And to become an ideal person, we need knowledge at all the levels, and we need also skills at the different levels. And then how do we develop this? And then we say a student is one who yearns to become an ideal person, or one who wants to attain the perfection. Perfection is no finiteness. The infinite is what is called perfection. Any finite thing cannot be perfect. So perfection again means that unmanifest level itself. It's only another word I am using for that infinite thing. And then of course our Indian knowledge, we normally call a student as Vidyarthi. And do you now know how deep that word Vidyarthi is? Because I already said anything manifested we learn about is called Avidya. And only the unmanifest is called Vidya. So an Indian student should be one who wants to really know his spiritual nature. Do you appreciate the depth of that word? One who wants to know Vidya. Vidya means the unmanifest. And unless we become the unmanifest, we will never know the unmanifest. So a true student, a student who wants to really become an ideal person, is the one who wants to really, truly experience the true nature of himself. And then, to become a real student, we should have interest. So we have already said with the first story that when you say you have understood something, you can express it as your own idea. Now, so far you have learned a lot of things. You have been a student for the last 10, 12 years. Still you have no idea of how to enjoy learning. Probably you have not enjoyed learning so far. And why have you not enjoyed learning? And the real reason is you did not have an interest. And why you did not have interest? Again, because you have not enjoyed learning. And why you have not enjoyed learning? Because you have not understood. When you understand what you have learned, you are able to use that knowledge. When you use the knowledge, it becomes interesting. Let us take the case of somebody who is learning a new knowledge. For instance, when you started learning English, you started learning by learning the alphabets. But if you every day keep only learning alphabets, would you ever enjoy learning the language? You will not be able to enjoy learning the language. You have to go ahead, learn words, learn sentences. And when you are able to express your ideas in the language of English, then you start enjoying learning English. Is it not? Similarly, you learn mathematics. You go on learning equations by heart, proofs and so on. You will never enjoy mathematics. Whereas you have learned mathematics, then you know using those mathematics you can model physical problems. And using those mathematical formulations you can find a solution and apply those solutions in real practice. You start enjoying learning mathematics. So what makes you enjoy learning something is to go into depth of the subject. Go understand it more profoundly. And then only you start enjoying knowledge. And that is why we should develop an interest. And then of course when you form your own models of the concepts, you really start enjoying learning. For instance, when you learn, most of you in your physics have learned about thermal conductivity. This thermal conductivity, if I ask you to define now, I know you will not be able to do it. Is it not? Whereas, you really think about it, and if you can make a physical model, then you will really, be happy to explain what thermal conductivity is. I'll tell you the model which I have sort of developed to explain thermal conductivity. Imagine a cube. Imagine a cube. And imagine two opposite sides having difference of 1 degree temperature difference. Okay? Then the amount of heat which will cross in this one-dimensional direction through the cube is the thermal conductivity. The model is very clear. Would you ever forget what thermal conductivity is? So when you develop concepts like this, again it becomes interesting. And then this is easy to apply. Easy to apply and understand because the concept is very clear and you can apply it. And then we can really develop interest. And then of course we also say, most of the time we say, we find learning a very boring thing. And so that is the reason why we should develop interest. When we develop interest, what happens? When we develop interest, concentration is spontaneous. Who complains about concentration? Those who find it not interesting. For instance, you will not find lack of concentration watching a cricket match. Watching a movie, you have no problem with concentration. You are interested. Okay? Similarly, the next aspect is you feel healthy and energetic. I always say this. I have rarely seen a man or a woman sick on a marriage day. They look forward to their wedding. And definitely they don't become sick. Whereas you can always see, just before the examination, so many students become sick. Even typhoid, Why? Because you are not wanting to face the examination. If you have an interest, if you want to do something, you are always ready and healthy. It will, in fact, it will fill you with all the energy you want in the world. Let us take a simple example. You listen to my lecture for a full day. What happens to you? Probably you have a headache also by the evening. So you go to hostel, you lie down and tell your friends, don't disturb me now. I am really having a headache and I want to rest. And you are lying down and then from your corridor you hear this loud shout that the famous movie actor has come to the front of the hostel. Your fan, you are his fan. So what do? You simply jump up and run to see your actor, is not? From where have you got this energy? You had a headache, you believe me, you had a headache, your headache is gone, you have all the energy to run to the front of the hostel. When you have the interest, you will have all the energy. And people who get involved in things, they have never a problem with lack of energy. One of the very interesting story I have read about is Michelangelo sculpting the David. You all heard about David, is it not? The famous sculpture by Michelangelo. When he went to buy the stone to sculpt David, the shopkeeper said, this stone is not good to sculpt a full human form. But Michelangelo said, no, this is the stone I want. The shopkeeper again trying to tell him, no, this stone is not good enough to sculpt a full human form. Michelangelo said, that you don't worry, but I will take this stone. And in fact, because the stone is not good, he even got the stone cheap. So he took it to his workshop and he started working on David. And of course, I will explain to this also. Have you seen this sculpture of David? David is shown with one hand resting on his head. So the width which is required for a full human form was not necessary because he kept the hand up. And that is how he sculpted David. And while he was sculpting David, one of his friends came to see him. And he was almost covered with the dust, and still he was sculpting. So that friend just said, Michael, and there is no response. So he said, why disturb him? He went away. And this repeated day after day after day for a week. And then finally the friend decided to really, disturb him, shook him out and said, why don't you at least have to take a bath? Don't you at least have a bite? He says, no. Energy comes into me from the stone as I sculpt. So that is how it is. If you are interested, if you are involved, you are drawing energy from the whole universe. You have no problem of having energy. And then of course, you should also understand how to learn. And that means you should understand the different aspects of the transformation process which should take place. Because we said learning is not trying to understand something. It is a transformation which has to take place for you. You have to transform yourself from an ordinary person to be an ideal person. And which means you should be able to observe yourself and understand the changes which are taking place. So which means you have to be detached. To look at yourself, is an ability which comes only if you have a little detachment. The eye cannot see itself. So eye wants to see itself, eye has to become different from the eye and then look at the eye. So if you want to look at yourself also, you have to become detached from yourself and then look at yourself and then become aware. So now to do this learning process properly at the very ordinary level, let us understand the different domains of learning. Here we said the first three aspects, the cognitive, the affective and the psychomotor aspects. What is the cognitive level? You have learned about something. With those definitions, with those understanding, you are able to identify what you have learned about. For instance, if you have learned about a cow, you should be able to distinguish between the statue of a cow and a real cow. If your cognition ability is not good, even a statue you will think of as a cow. So even cognitive level ability is to be made perfect. You cannot simply say, now I have understood, in the photograph I have seen the cow, I see a statue of the cow, you cannot say this is a cow. The real cow is a live animal which can move, which can do a lot of things, and this clarity of understanding should come in. And then of course, normally in the today's education system, we are given only up to this level. And the next level of affective learning, that is with the heart, is more important, because to really live, it is better that we have learned at the heart level itself. Though today we use the word by hearting at a lower level of understanding. By hearting today we mean that we have no understanding and then we can repeat the words